Hey Hunters, Halo Zoo here for a new Unearthed Arcana overview video. Okay, folks. So we've got Underdark Options. So this kind of came out of nowhere. Wasn't really expecting this. Uh, Especially because the order they announced the stuff. So if you haven't seen the Gen Con keynote from D&D, they announced something called D&D Icons. And the first two they announced were Greyhawk and Dragonlance. And of course, this is stuff going with original authors, or at least an author strongly associated with something. So, in the case of Dragonlance, it was actually the original creators of Dragonlance. For Greyhawk, it is Luke Gygax, the son of Gary. And then there's also a new one, which is going to be Death Saves, which ironically is the first one coming out, it seems, since we've actually seen anything about that book at all. And what seems to be the second one, which is R.A. Salvatore doing Faerun stuff with Legend of Drizzt. As, yeah, this is very suspiciously, I wonder if we're getting Menzo Brenzen stuff and a lot of Underdark stuff. You know, that one place that wasn't really mentioned much in Heroes of Faerun and stuff. Yeah, definitely seems like this is going to be involved with that book. This also means, despite some doubts and assumptions to the contrary of the truth now, it does seem like these are indeed first-party books. They are going to be... It is possible for them to have Unearthed Arcana content, which means it does seem like Death Saves may end up being where the villainous options are coming out. As a world where evil's won seems like the perfect place to do a bunch of evil options. Regardless, though, this seems to confirm that we're going to Faerun next in D&D Icons for the Underdark stuff, as there is nothing explicitly Dragonlance or Greyhawk announced yet that we've seen. Thus, this seems to be the next thing they're doing. Regardless, we have 3 subclasses, which is very light, and then the Path of Ceremorphosis. I have read this ahead of time. This is definitely one of the overall worst Unearthed Arcanas we've had in a while. I will say, none of this is as bad as previous bad option stuff. Like, nothing is the worst they've ever done. There is no tattooed warrior monk. There is no hexblade warlock. There is nothing like accursed shields. And there is no piezo tier designs where they've just idiotically made something that doesn't work. Well, okay. There is one, actually. It is not in the subclasses, however. As a light spoiler that, it's not all great. I will say, one, I do think works out quite well. And I will say, none of this needs to be sent back to the drawing board. I think these just need some refining and attunement, some tuning to make them more fun. Also, can we please get more reprint stuff? That would be nice. I get there's not much to reprint with this. However, it would be nice to get some more reprints with this. if we're going to go to Faerun, it'd be nice to have some more traditional stuff. It might come with Greyhawk, though. But we'll see. Regardless, let us begin with the Path of Unlight. So, basically, it's this magical power of light that is used in the Underdark. And it has some positive benefits, but also some very sinister ones. Regardless, we have the Path of Unlight Barbarian here, and they just glow. So their first feature, and only feature, is Radiant Rage. So if a creature hits you with a melee attack roll while your rage is active, it takes radiant damage equal to your rage damage bonus, and while rage is active, you shed bright light in a 20-foot radius. My gosh, is this feature not good? Unironically, I think the best part is that you get the light. Unironically, that might be the only, the best part of it. The Thorns damage is just so minuscule, it's not really worth it. It's like, you've got it, it's not much. Because rage damage sucks. It really does. You also have no way to make your attacks deal radiant damage, which would have been nice. As a sort of, hey, you get radiant damage. Also, notice that this is the only third level feature. All you get is Radiant Thorns and becoming a glow stick. Great. Just great. Now, do keep in mind, becoming a moving light while enraged is actually very useful for the Underdark, as a way to get around the dim light conditions you will constantly be in, even with dark vision. And if you don't naturally have dark vision, this is a great way to get around that. So, as I said, I think the you shed light is actually really nice. I do question why it is only bright light. There is no dim light beyond it, when just about everything else does that when it generates light. So it ends up being very awkward as a result of that, where it's like, well, why would that not give any dim light? Granted, I think the idea is that Unlight does not shed dim light. It has a fixed radius of light. That is all it gives. Seems to be a mechanic that is going through the two Unlight associated subclasses. Then at 6th level, your only feature is Unlight Revelation. You have proficiency in perception if you lacked it before, and you gain expertise in it. Very good, really nice to have. Also, while rage is active, you have blind sight equal to the range of the bright light of Radiant Rage. So basically, anything in the bright light you have blind sense with. Actually, a pretty good feature. Don't get me wrong, this is decent to have. Usually, though, blind sight isn't too useful. The main benefits would be if you were in total darkness, but because it's activated through rage, that's kind of a moot point. So it's like, well, why would it matter that you have blind sight while you have bright light active? Outside of invisible stuff, which, do not get me wrong, it is great. However, at this point, you are 6th level and your subclass is only giving you 2 features, and neither of them is that exciting or does that much. This is a really bad start to what otherwise could have been a very interesting subclass. So I do think in a vacuum it's fine. Same with Radiant Rage. Like, in a vacuum, this is fine. As the only feature you get, this sucks. Same with Unlight Revelation, though I will say if there was a second, third level feature that was actually useful, I'd be a bit more lenient to this one. It's very much a everything about this just ends up being a massive, underwhelming. You just don't have anything good. Ironically, making it the antithesis of Wild Magic Barbarian, where they start off interesting, but really plateau quickly because they just don't scale into the later game. This is kind of the opposite, where it's really underwhelming at first. Like, sure, Radiant Rage might help a little bit, but it's not going to help a lot. And Unlight Revelation, the Blind Sight's cool. It's just a shame it doesn't really do much most of the time. The only times it's going to do anything is if you're in magical darkness, which isn't always a problem, or if you are in uh, facing something invisible, which it is one of those, admittedly, you don't use it often, but when it comes up, it is amazing to have tools. So that's nice at least. I just wish they had anything else here. Then we get Infectious Unlight. Damage you deal with Brutal Strike can be Radiant or the usual type. About time they did anything else with Radiant damage. Really could have come earlier, but this is when you get it, I guess. And you also get Radiant Infection as an option. So when you hit with a Brutal Strike, target's infected with Unlight for 1 minute. While infected, it sheds bright light in 10-foot radius. And at the start of each of its turns, it takes d6 radiant damage. And at the end of each of its turn, it gets to make a con save in order to try and escape that. So, about what you usually expect, actually. So, this isn't bad. Also, randomly they get Harbinger of Unlight, which just gives resistant to radiant damage. It is not great. Once again, I feel like this probably could have been moved forward. Because I think usually around 6th level, you'll see resistances show up. So it's like, we know they are more than fine putting resistances at around 6th level. So why not put it there on this one? Because they really need something else that's kind of an active. Maybe also have a second damage type resistance, maybe fire. Because Radiant doesn't come up that often either. So ultimately, I feel like this could have been moved earlier, and this would help the level 6 feel not as bad. Either that or maybe move it to 3rd level even, as a sort of, because Rage is naturally giving resistances, I think actually that would fit pretty well. And because it is Radiant, it doesn't push the power budget too much, because Radiant, it's one of the least useful energy resistances, in my opinion. Usually you're better served with just about anything else besides Thunder and Force. Because those are the other two that don't really come up much. Poison's great, necrotic is great, psychic is great. Fire, it's good. Cold is also good. Lightning, acid, and thunder. Well, acid is also relatively good. It shows up a decent amount of the time. But radiant might actually be the worst. Because a lot of stuff that does it, you don't usually fight. Brilliant Rage then at the end with level 14. So, Aura of Unlight's bolstered. And Radiant Rage now has a 30-foot radius, meaning your blind sight's also 30-foot radius. Not amazing, I'll be honest. The extra 10 feet doesn't really do that much. Sure, it gives you a lot more area that's affected by light. However, it's 14th level. You're not really going to care that much about how much light you shed. Though, thinking about it, maybe change Radiant Rage to be when a creature in the bright light hits you, and sort of remove the melee attack part, where any attack that hits you from a creature in the bright light takes that damage. That'd be a nice buff to it, so it's not... Like, don't get me wrong. It is perfectly fine as melee only. You are a barbarian. It will come up a lot. However, thinking on the fly, that would make this range upgrade more relevant. Also, 20-foot, a 10-foot radius increase. It ain't much. You're not getting a lot more out of it. So, then you also get a secondary ability. As a bonus action, you unleash Blinding Radiance. When you do, each creature of your choice in 30 feet has to make a con save. Or it takes 1d12 radiant damage and has the blinded condition, or half damage on a success. I mean, as a bonus action, fine in theory, but wait. Once you use this, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest or expend rage? Ew. That damage is way too low if it's a once per day. Like, I will say, there are two compromises. There are two routes to go. Either make this recharge on a short rest, or rather just increase its availability, give it charges per long, like strength or con uses per long rest, or give it short rest recharge, or just make it hit harder. Because 1d12 ain't much, dude. I don't know what to tell you, but 1d12, even in a big area, is not great. Especially as a capstone. Like, this could be at least 2d12, maybe even 4d12 maximum. Because 4d12 would actually put it at fireball damage, and because this is coming a lot of levels later, almost 10 actually. Like, this is 9 levels after you get fireball. I think 4d12 damage is perfectly fine for a bonus action once per day ability on a 14th level barbarian. So yeah, the damage, not worth the once per day. Overall, I like the idea in theory. It just needs a few more interesting things to do, especially early on. And then Brilliant Rage's bonus action ability really needs a buff to be worth it at all. So overall, it's pretty underwhelming. It's not amazing. Nothing is bad. Like, everything is perfectly fine. It's just underpowered and boring. So then we go over to the house agent for rogue. This is an interesting one. So the idea is you're basically like, primarily, you're Drow from Menzo Brinzen. Though you can do other stuff. So level 3, we get House Insignia. So basically you get this item, this token, that you get to cast spells with. And I will say, yeah, real quick side note, wizards, this should count as a spellcasting focus. Just saying. If you're going to need it to cast spells, it should be the spellcasting focus itself. Uh, just looking at that, yeah, that's kind of weird that it's not. Regardless, you get the Friends cantrip. Okay, fine. You also get a set of insignia spells, so as you progress the next few odd numbered levels, and also why I hate this. I genuinely hate this. Why does this skip 7th level? It goes from 7th to 9th. You get something at 5th, but not 7th? That it is weird. Granted, I kind of understand why they'd be very hesitant to give you. But I guess it, well, falls half caster progression, thinking about it. It's just weird where it's like 3, 5, 9. But yeah, second thought, yeah, it is half caster progression. Kind of annoying that it caps out at 3rd rank, but the spells you get is Charm Person, which, great. Not a bad spell to have. Also, I like how they put learn the listed spells, which does suggest they are going away from everything is prepared, and instead are going to say learn if you just know it, and then prepare if you're actually preparing it, which, great change, love it. And you basically get these once per day. Charm Person, it's nice. It fits the build they're going for here as a more charm-focused build. You also get Suggestion, which, yeah, thematically fits. And out of nowhere, Hypnotic Effing Pattern. One, why does it stop here? I feel like you could have given them 2 more spells at 11th and 17th. With one of them being Charm Monster, specifically. That would have been nice to have. But it is what it is. You get Hypnotic Effing Pattern. That's an annoying spell to have, but you are limited to 1 per day, so there is that at least. Now, another interesting thing is that you get access to Find Familiar. Only as a ritual, but you have it. You also get a free casting, which, congrats, great idea. You don't have attacks for this class feature. However, it has to be a spider, which isn't already not great. You want flying familiars. The owl is so much better. It's not even funny. I mean, it's got a climb speed, and it does have some use as spiders can scout in areas that you can't normally get owls. So there is at least that going for it. And I guess as an Underdark subclass, it does make sense that you wouldn't have a flying familiar. but very strict on the flavor, where it's like, yes, you could be an agent from a Duergar clan, religious order, Brigand Earth, or the Jintarim. You're really supposed to be associated with Menzoberranzan to some degree. That's really what they want you to do. And there's not much benefit for you outside of the basic help stuff, and sometimes scouting, if that's ever relevant at all, to have from a familiar. And you also don't get the normal benefit, which is you can cast touch spells from afar, which, granted, casters outside of specific builds don't really do that a lot. You don't see that a lot. It's something you can do. It's just most people don't. But you don't have that even. It just kind of feels like, well, why would a rogue who's already good at scouting get a familiar? They don't get much out of it. But oh well. Overall, I think they could give a little more to this. Also, maybe tweak the Find Familiar a little bit so it's got some better stuff. Or it improves the spider in some way, where it's like, hey, you get like extra damage with it, or accuracy or something. I don't know. Just any little buff. Though you also get Charming Presence at 3rd level, so at the very least you do have multiple class features. Which, this one lets you use Cunning Action for Deception, Intimidation, Performance, or Persuasion. Through the Influence action. So basically you can use Influence and use that as a bonus action, which is a pretty cool idea. You also get a free Charisma skill proficiency, which is nice to pair with this. Overall, I think this is a cool idea. It does start to push it where it's like, because 3rd level, you're just a crappy arcane trickster. That's just about all you are. Like, sure, you get hypnotic patterns sooner, but it feels very weird that it's just stunted in its spell development, where it's like, you only get 3 spells a day. Hope you're happy with your 1 cast of Charm Person, your 1 cast of Suggestion, your 1 hypnotic pattern. Yeah, it's not great, but it is at least a charisma-based build, and is paired with Charming Presence, so it does start to push a different direction, which I do actually appreciate. So I appreciate that part. Then level 9, we get Backstab. So this gives you advantage on attack rolls against creatures in 5 feet of you that are friendly to you or have the charmed condition. So basically, if you use friends or charm person, you get this benefit. Honestly, not bad. It's very niche, however, as it's similarly with Charming Presence. I feel like Charming Presence isn't that relevant normally. Most people aren't doing full, like, oh, what is your action and bonus action in a social encounter? 90% of the time, like, or 99% of the time. The bonus action part doesn't really matter. This, it's very much a, they don't get much out of it. You're not going to get a lot out of it. It's cool thematically. It's just, you don't get a lot out of it, and it does suck that 2 of your main options, Charm Person and Friends, are creature locked, or they're type locked. So you better be fighting humanoids or you're screwed. Then you also get the Stunning Betrayal for the cost of 4d6 sneak attack dice. If your target was friendly or was charmed when you hit it, they are stunned till the start of your next turn. Why the F would you ever use this? For one, it is so hard to trigger this, where you have to use one of your spells to charm the target, and then sacrifice a whopping 4 sneak attack dice. Which, by the way, means you're only doing plus 1d6 damage, because this is at 9th level, just to stun the target. It is 1000% not worth the cost. It is too hard to set up for way too little reward. If, maybe if it was like, okay, well, it's 4d6 normally, but if you get a condition, then it's cheaper, or something like that. That would be nice. As it is, this is not worth the cost. It really isn't. This could be a 1d6, and I'd still say the cost is a bit annoying. Maybe even just make it not a cunning strike and just be, oh hey, when you hit somebody friendly or charmed by you, they're stunned till the start of your next turn. And also, this is start of your next turn. You don't even get the benefit of them being stunned. Yeah, Stunning Betrayal. What an awful feature, and an absolute shame this is your only 9th level feature. So, yep, you've got a bit of assassin syndrome going on where, except worse, because you don't even really get anything that interesting. Well, okay, you do get Hypnotic Pattern at this level. I will give you that. But you don't get a lot out of it. 13th, though, you get Infiltration Partner, where Find Familiar gets a 120-foot dark vision range and 30 feet of true sight. AKA, it's doing literally anything at all. Then when you cast Find Familiar or finish a short or long rest while it's out, you can give it temporary hit points equal to your rogue level, so it's not going to get squished like the little bug it is. Why is this not baseline? I really feel like that part at least should be baseline. Why is it all the way at 13th effing level? Yeah, not sure what this is doing all the way over here. It really feels like it just isn't worth it. It's not a great feature because it comes way too late. Granted, it is nice, do not get me wrong. 1000% this is a nice feature. I like it for what it is. However, I cannot deny it's annoyingly late. You also get Silver Tongue at this level. Creature's hostile attitude doesn't impose disadvantage on your charisma checks to influence the creature. Once again, I feel like this is maybe a bit too late. Maybe if this was at 9th level as well, it would kind of offset the sting of how oddly specific backstab is. That way it's like, okay, well, you can influence in combat a bit easier, which is niche, but it's there. And it kind of fits the idea of, hey, you want to be a charming character instead of just, a normal scoundrel with a couple of spells to throw. Then level 17, you get Subtle Manipulator, which, okay, so first off, I am going to mention this. So, it has 2 passives that are listed under the Cunning Strike. I don't know why. That's not how it works, but okay. Regardless, you can cast the friend spell as a bonus action. Once again, why is this so late? That would be nice way earlier. Target no longer automatically succeeds on the saving throw if it's not humanoid or if you're fighting it. Once again, why the crazes is this coming so late? Seriously, why is this so late? And when a spell you cast that gives target the charmed condition ends, target doesn't know it was charmed by you. Just a useful, oh hey, you don't actually ignore, you don't automatically become hostile because you know I charmed you. So there is that at least. Uh, the passives, I question why they're the capstone when they really feel like they shouldn't be. Like, at least the part that's not the friends can target non-humanoids. Everything but that, maybe even put that baseline. Genuinely, I feel like that could be baseline. But overall, this passive bit is like, why is it so late? And then Subtle Manipulator gets Confound as well. So you trade 5d6 sneak attack dice to force the target to make a wisdom saving throw, DC equal to your spell casting DC, or have the charmed condition for a minute. Target can repeat the save when it takes any damage, ending the effect on itself on a success. Really nice. Also, probably would have been nice to have much earlier, because my gosh, do you need it. Overall, House Agent, at first it just feels like kind of a bad arcane trickster, but with charisma stuff going on, and doesn't really get much. Like, they have some cool ideas where it's like, it's a rogue with a familiar, it's a rogue about charming people. It just needs a lot of work. A lot of stuff could be pushed a bit further. Like, everything from, I think, Infiltration Partner to Subtle Manipulator could be moved up a bit. To some degree, like, maybe even have, like, Infiltration Partner is just part of third level features, except the True Sight. True Sight can stay at 13th. Backstab can stay at 9th, though. Friends is a bonus action, and oh, I did not want to do that. Oops. Anyway, that part can move up to third level. Same with the, if you're fighting it, it doesn't auto succeed. Move that up. Doesn't succeed if it's humanoid, can be moved up maybe 9th or 13th, maybe 9th. Move Confound a bit earlier too, maybe have it at 13th and then Silver Tongues at 9th. And then have something else as the capstone, because it's not great. It could use a facelift. And I'm going to pause for a moment. Sorry, I had to get a drink of soda. So anyway, we are on the halfway point, which means we're at the Imaskarcanist for the wizard. So this one is another sort of unlight specialist of sorts. So they have this power to heal and destroy sort of thing. So level 3, we start off with Unlight Adept. So first off, let's get the weird one out of the way. Dim light created by spells you cast is bright light instead. Kind of going with the theme of you don't, Unlight seems to just be bright light, nothing beyond that. It's a bit weird, but okay. Also note, this gives light a massive 40-foot area of bright light. Yeah, your light spells are kind of silly. Also, it makes dancing lights hypothetically worth casting at all if you're not doing anything else with your concentration at the time. However, the main benefit is the absurd. Anytime you deal acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can make it radiant damage. Wizards? Why did you come up with such an amazingly powerful feature? Yeah, this is very absurd in power. At least for what it is, because keep in mind, Radiant is one of the best damage types you can be doing. Radiant resistance is relatively rare. And as I said before, with getting resistance to it, it doesn't come up often, and it's usually stuff you won't be fighting. So there's not a lot of cases where it matters that you're doing Radiant, so it gets around a lot of elemental resistances, which is especially good for cold, fire, and lightning. Especially cold. Acid and thunder less so, but still nice, especially as it allows you to focus on Radiant stuff. As, anybody want to go Spellfire feats? Because that's sounding pretty ridiculous when you're able to pair it with this absurdity. Also note, this is not just wizard spells. This is any spell you do. So 3-level dip into wizard for Unlight Adept, and rest into whatever class you want to do. Like, you could do this in Warlock. I mean, 3-level dip with Celestial Warlock actually is pretty silly, because that lets you do all of your spells triggering their passive. That's pretty silly. But yeah, regardless, uh and also another benefit of doing radiant damage is the vulnerability to it is very common. It's because there's a couple enemies that do have the vulnerability that are somewhat common. So you do see it semi-regularly. It is one that tends to matter. So it is nice you have it on demand as a wizard of all things. Yeah, definitely has a lot of potential to be absolutely absurd in power. So your DM should be mindful of adding this, uh, using Radiant vulnerable enemies against you. It might occasionally throw them in as just like, yeah, go blow them up. But it is pretty silly. I will say that. Then you also get Unlight Invigoration. So you can imbue creatures with Unlight drawn from your own energy, making them stronger. As a bonus action, you can choose a creature in 30 feet of you, and you can roll. You can expend up to 2 hit dice and roll them, and you'll give the target temporary hit points equal to the total rolled plus intelligence modifier, and until it has none remaining, it is advantage on strength checks and sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius. The light is somewhat useful, especially for melee characters who you want to use this on anyway. Most of the time, as the buffer is nice. You're not going to give them a lot of temporary hit points, but being able to spend a few to give your buddies a boost is really nice. Also note, one little nitpick I have, if you want to get the most out of the feature, it is always better to spend only 1 hit die so you can trigger the plus int more. So basically, you can double your. You can get a lot more out of it. Because you're effectively getting, like. I mean, it's a decent amount of temporary hit points from it. So it is kind of annoying to have that, though I do get the idea that, okay, it's better to have, like. You would rather have a chunk of them now. Also, not entirely a fan of the very, let's say, random temporary hit point amounts, but I do get what they're going for. Cool idea in theory. In practice, I do have a nitpick. A very important one. Speaking of that nitpick, Unlight Restoration at 6th level. As a bonus action, you can choose a creature in 30 feet and expend 2 hit dice and roll them, and the target regains hit points equal to that amount. And it sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius till the end of its next turn. Okay, I will say, at the very least, this is not good for shedding light, but, yeah, slightly questionable as to why the crazes this is just an enhanced version of Unlight Invigoration. It's weird. Granted, if you do expend 2 hit dice, you can end a blinded, deafened, paralyzed, or poisoned effect. You don't heal with it, but you do get to remove an effect. So that's nice. I do, however, question why do you get these back to back? Like, there's not even a buffer between them. It's just like, oh yeah, you start off with the ability to give people temporary hit points, and then you get the ability to actually heal them. Very weird decision. Probably the one critique I have with this is it's not even necessarily a problem, just a weird thing of, huh, kind of odd to have them back to back. So it's weird, but it is what it is. Uh, Also, it's their only feature, which actually, if anything, kind of makes it weirder, where it's like, hey, here's this weirdly similar feature. Hmm. Regardless, at 10th level, we get just 4 features. We get Imaskarcanist lore. You can attune yourself to a magic item as a magic action, and you do this once per long rest. Why would you ever use this? It is barely useful. So, yeah, I genuinely don't really see a lot of use for this. It's one of those, you have to be doing something absolutely absurdly weird for this to matter. Like, I guess it would be like you have an item that's like good to have attuned to at the opening and then switch off of it later, or like you have an item you switch to in an emergency for its defensive benefit. I don't know. It's one of those weird features you're almost never going to get a lot of use out of. But then you get Piercing Unlight. Spells ignore resistance to radiant damage. Usually this isn't going to matter too much. Similar with Unlight Resilience, you have resistance to radiant damage. Uh, they're not amazing. I feel like maybe these could be moved over to 6th level. Just as a, hey, here's a buff for using radiant damage, and also you have resistance to it as a sort of fluff feature alongside the healing ability. It's not bad. But then we also get Glyph of Warding, which you can cast once per day for free. Also using the highest wizard spell slot. You only get one of these, but this is a very weird feature. Now granted, I can see some like niche things you can do with this. Like Glyph of Warding though is not the most useful spell to have a free cast of. Even if it's like, oh, by the way, you get the max, like effectively a free 9th rank slot out of this. A very weird one. It's definitely an oddball one. So 10th level, it feels like, now granted, I will say the first 3 features are really nice. They give you a good mix of abilities, the ability to give a buffer of HP and some light to an ally, then the ability to heal them up in a pinch using the dice you rarely used anyway. And then also access to radiant damage, which is amazing. Secretly the best part. So, yeah, Secrets of Deep Imaskar uh, doesn't really feel like anything truly amazing, though you can do some very weird things with it. There's definitely some weird corner case uses. It's not going to be used a lot, but some of it, it's nice to have. Someone's going to try and do something stupid with it, though. Then, level 14, you get Doom of Unlight. A really cool feature, actually. So, when a creature takes radiant damage from a spell you cast, use a reaction to curse it with Unlight. Has to make a con save or be cursed and have the following effects. And this is permanent, by the way. Yeah, they're just dead. Granted, you get 1 curse attempt per day, but yeah. So what does this do? It emits bright light in a 20-foot radius. Also, kind of weird when everything else you do using Unlight involves being in having a 10-foot radius of bright light. Though, I guess the idea is this is you're overloading the target with Unlight rather than just a light infusion. Pun not intended, but I'm going to pretend it is. Uh, so you do get that. I guess it matches that flavor. Uh, it is weird though, where it's like, yes, I give my allies 10-foot radius light and my enemies 20 feet. Even though the opposite would be more useful. Don't think about it too much. Then attack rolls against target have advantage. At the start of each of its turns, it takes radiant damage equal to your level. So, yeah, that's going to kill the target quickly. Also has advantage on strength checks and melee attack rolls. Which is, very much a choice of all time. Very risk slash reward, but my gosh, is, it's definitely a weird thing to give them, but at the same time, you do have a lot of advantages against them. Okay, actually, if it does hit another creature with a melee attack roll, can repeat the con save, ending the curse on a success. Which actually makes the... Okay, actually, I'm not as big a fan of that advantage now, where it's like... So, if it hits a creature with a melee attack, it can end the curse. why would you give it advantage on melee attacks? It's kind of silly. Granted, I'm glad they have some way to end it early, but then if the target's reduced to 0 hit points, it explodes. And you get to roll a number of d8s equal to half your character level. At this point, 7d8. Doing more than fireball damage. If targets, then creatures in a 10-foot emanation take radiant damage equal to the total rolled. Automatically, I might add. Yeah, that's silly. Especially when the target sheds light in 20 feet, not 10. Very weird dichotomy. Granted, one of those might be a typo. Like, the bright light in 20-foot radius, looking at it, it might be a typo. As everything else they do is light in a 10-foot radius, and that would match the explosion size. It's fine, just weird. Yeah. If you kill the target, it's... Which can happen a decent amount of the time, especially if you get an enemy that can't hit worth a crap, with melee attacks at least. Yeah, very powerful. The melee attack rolls advantage, though, a bit anti-synergistic with it. Kind of feels like a antithesis of it, but basically you do get the feature once per day, or you can expend 6+ spell slots to recharge it. Not exactly worth it when it's a save or suck. I'd maybe have it at least do like, oh, if it succeeds on the save, it takes your level radiant damage. Just so you get one ping of the damage. And then also, if that does still kill it, you get the explosion. So it can be used as an execute. I think that'd be cool. But, eh. It's... So it's definitely a... Starts off pretty cool. It has some weirdness with Unlight Restoration immediately following Unlight Invigoration, as well as the and randomly Doom of Unlight makes it shed a 20-foot radius of light, despite all the 10-foot radius stuff. But I will say this is overall the one that I think is in the best place, because it starts good, and its other features are fine. Maybe a bit underwhelming in some aspects, but even like Doom of Unlight, my only problem is the weirdness with the how much light it sheds, as well as the, oh, you give it melee attack roll advantage when it has to make melee attack rolls to end the curse. Not what I want to be doing. So then we get to Path of Ceremorphosis, and I'm going to take another break before this. Alright, so basically just some flavor stuff with Ceremorphosis. So it all starts with Tadpole Host. So you get +1 intelligence. Okay, fine. Uh, they're always associated with intelligence. It would have been nice to have a bit of versatility, especially for class compatibility, as we'll see in a bit. However, it's okay. It has a strong association. Mind flayers are typically associated with intelligence, so it does make sense. Then you get Mind Sliver. Good cantrip. Psionic Power, then. You get a Wellspring of Psionic Energy, so you get Psi Energy dice. Start at D6s, and they grow. You only get Prof bonus, so normally you get twice it. So you only get 2 to start off with, and you're about to get the 3rd, but the progression on it is a bit slow. So you do have an amount of psionic energy dice. Still not a fan of them being dice, but oh well. Uh, then you also get Psionic Overload. When you deal psychic damage, you can use it as Psionic Energy die and add that to the damage roll. Simple, but it's effective. Then you get Illithid Thrallmaker. So you get Intelligence or Charisma +1. Why does it suddenly let you buff another score? As if you actually ever want to do that? Because, and this is one thing I'll immediately point out, the intelligence requirement is very annoying as a deal, because it means that it's only really compatible with Wizard and Artificer by default. Also Eldritch Knight, but it's not compatible with a lot of other classes, which is really annoying. Though I should also mention, yes, it's going to be compatible with Scion, which does matter a lot as they are the number one person to take it. So Thrallmaker, you get the quote-unquote option of getting Charisma +1. The only reason you would ever do that is because this is the last feat you got, and you already got max intelligence. Literally the only reason you would ever touch Charisma. Because it's not buffing your spells. Sonic Energy dice become a D8 if you don't already have them as D8s. Then you get Telepathy. So this kind of works in a weird way. So on its own, as I've alluded to previously, I do not like short range telepathy. 10-foot telepathy sucks. You might as well be whispering. However, I do appreciate the idea that these stack together. So, sure, Thrallmaker gives you only 10 feet of telepathy, but you'll notice if you already have telepathy from something else, you can buff that by an additional 10 feet. And as a quick spoiler, Sonic Energy Dice and Telepathy are shared in common with all three of the middle path feats. So Tadpole Host is your first feat, and Full Ceremorphosis is your end feat. The rest are your mid feats. So all of them give these two features. If it's a mid feat, so you can get up to 30 telepathy from Path of the Illithid. Granted, not exactly ideal to do that, but oh well. Then we get the ability Persuasive Presence, which lets you cast Charm Person, and you can use Psionic Energy dice to cast it. When you cast it with them, you can roll the die and subtract half the number, round it up, from its saving throw. So basically, -1 to 4. You're effectively reducing it by a d4, just like Mindsliver would have, though this importantly stacks with Mindsliver. Yeah, that's pretty stupid, actually, now that I point it out. Not sure it's supposed to be that stupid. Uh, but yeah, you could potentially penalize it by -8. Granted, you have to get lucky twice, but still, it's possible. Then we get Tadpole's Safeguard. So this is the second option you can pick up. The alternate ability score increase is Constitution this time. But you still get Psionic Energy die, still get Telepathy. But you instead get Warding Backlash as the extra ability, which gives you Shield, which you can cast using Psionic Energy dice. Yay! And if you successfully cause the triggering attack to miss, you can roll the expended die, and the attacker takes psychic damage equal to the amount rolled. It's not amazing. Also, this might as well be, hey, whenever you use this feature, it does damage. Because nobody is ever casting shield and not making the attack miss. That's like what you always do. And do note this is only the triggering attack. This does not affect subsequent attacks, which would have been nice, but it is what it is. Doesn't really change how you play the spell. Same with the other one. Like, it's just a nice buff. Though, unlike the previous one, it's kind of just there. Main benefit is getting shield at all on your build, which it's not bad. And last but definitely least for the middle feats of the path, Lithorid's Might. So you get a physical ability score increase, which is not ideal when the rest of it is all about being a caster. So you instead get Strength, Dex, or Con +1. Whoop-de-effing do. You also get Psionic Energy Dice and Telepathy if you don't already have it, or buffs telepathy range. Whoop-de-effing do. Probably the only good thing about this, actually, is that it does give you +10 telepathy. Because you're certainly not using Extended Tentacles, where basically you get 2 tentacles from around your mouth, use them to make unarmed strikes. When you're using them, reach increases by 5 feet. You just get nothing else. These don't do psychic damage at all. These don't do any more damage than normal. You don't get extra reach with touch spells. You just get +5 foot reach on your unarmed strikes. Wow, this feat sucks. Really? I mean, if it was your first, okay. If you're a monk, my gosh. Unfortunately, you are not playing this as a monk, probably. Monk really doesn't have much of a reason to be touching this as long as you cannot use wisdom instead of intelligence. As it stands, the only build I realistically see using it is either going to be Psy Warrior Fighter, which actually makes a lot of sense that they would use it if they are the Brawler style. It's a very weird style to play it on, but that does make it somewhat useful, actually. Still not amazing, because it has no synergy with anything else you do, but it's there. And then you also get Arcane. Well, Eldritch Knight gets a benefit from it, because they do benefit from the same stuff, where it's like you're strength based, but you have the intelligence to back it up, so you could be an intelligence based brawler fighter and use it. It's an option. It's there. It's still not great. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with this one. It could really use anything else with it. Then full. Like, you don't even get extra damage, by the way. Like, keep that in mind. This is a normal unarmed strike. You just have 5 foot reach. Or +5 foot reach. Instead of normal 5 foot reach, you have a reach weapon, essentially, with a 10 foot reach. It's really not amazing. Full Ceremorphosis, then, which requires Tadpole, Safeguard, and Throwmaker, since you're not getting Unearthed Might. You get +1 intelligence again. Whoop-de-effing do. Kinda means you're actually never choosing the charisma. Unless for some reason you do have Unearthed Might. But yeah, it's not great. But psionic energy dice become D10s. If they were already D10s, they become D12s. Probably thrown in literally just for Psi Warriors. Granted, it makes sense, actually. You become an aberration, meaning a few things break, because becoming a different creature type is really stupid. But, it's neat. You also get a specialization. You can get brain-seeking tentacles. Hypothetically speaking, at least, because this is unarmed strike based. So when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, party attack action at your turn, you can use both the damage and grapple options, and you can expend psionic energy to roll it and add that number plus your intelligence modifier psychic damage to the hit, and it subtracts half the number rounded up from its saving throw to avoid the grappled condition. If target's reduced to 0 HP as a result of it, you don't lose the die. You only get to do this once per turn, but still. It's quite powerful. Unfortunately, it sucks. You're just not gonna be built for it. Like, with all the other stuff being more caster bent, it just doesn't make sense. There's no damage buff with Lithrid's Might. There's no using finesse with it when 90% of the time you'll want that, except for exactly 2 builds that don't need it. It's just not really that well built for what it is. So it would be good if the subclass was actually good itself. It's very much uh, it wouldn't be bad if it wasn't so underpowered and poorly set up for. Because also another thing I would suggest, just coming off top of my head, it would be cool if the specializations actually required one of the specific feats. So instead of Brain Seeking Tentacles would require Illithrid's Might, a buffed Illithrid's Might, mind you. And then there was 2 other options that used Thrallmaker or Safeguard. But as it is, you get Mind Flayer spells as the alternative, which you get once per day. You get to use Detect Thoughts, Levitate, and Mind Blast using psionic energy dice, which it's nice. And this is technically repeatable, but you get a different option for Mind Flayer spells. Also, this is how you can get D12s by default with this, which isn't half bad. It's there at least. Uh, Also, Mind Blast is here. I'm pretty sure it's identical to the last time we saw it. I'm actually going to real quickly double check on my phone, just so I'm not talking out of nowhere, but standard action, 60-foot cone, int save, 68 psychic damage, stunned on a failed save, half damage on a successful save. This hits really hard. At the very least, it is hard to position it, because it is a 60-foot cone, which is actually the hardest. So cones are usually the hardest AoE to aim, and this one is really big. So you're definitely going to struggle to aim this one, but the damage is really high, because 68 is actually equivalent to Fireball in Lightning Bolt, and it just scales to be better. Actually, this is 6th level. I forgot this was 6th rank, which actually makes that damage really suck. But it does give a stun, so it is unfortunately identical. This feels like it could be moved down a few ranks, and like you could move this to 4th rank and it would be fine. Also, it has been cut from Wizard, weirdly enough, as this is Scion exclusive apparently. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I like the idea that Scion didn't really have a lot of exclusives, because they actually had like, now granted they did have one before, in Life Siphon, which is the weirdest one of why is that Scion exclusive? Also, why is it enchantment? So yeah, they had a couple exclusives, but making this one a Scion exclusive, bit odd, but oh well, it's fine. Overall, though, Path of Ceremorphosis, cool idea in theory. In practice, yeah, the tentacles build, they really didn't think that out. It really needs finesse to work at all, and alas, it does not have that. So, you are going to struggle a lot more with this one. Uh, Otherwise, the other stuff is okay. Persuasive Presence might have a bit too powerful of a reward or a bonus effect, because yeah, it's actually really crazy when you look at it. It's a choice of all time to do this. I'll be honest, it's oh boy, having that when you start with Mind Sliver is, yeah. Overall though, it's okay. It needs work, but otherwise mostly fine. Also, while normally I would be freaking out that it's like, oh my gosh, they get a 6th rank spell that they can spam. However, this does require a bit of an investment, as you do have to go down a very specific path to get it. So it's like, it is an investment, because that's 4 feats you have to get for it. So it is a lot in that department, but other than that, it's definitely, in Mind Blast at least, it's like it's no more powerful than a third rank spell. Let's be honest. Uh, Interested to see what else they come up with for this. Overall, I think a lot of this needs more work because, like, Imaskarcanist is the only one that doesn't really need a lot of work to be better. The rest, they do need it. But it's interesting to see. I'm actually interested to see what comes next, as we've actually kind of gotten back-to-back stuff for what seems to be D&D icons. So I have no idea what else is coming. But without further ado, see y'all next time. Halo Zoo, out.